And we're still following that major breaking news out of the NFL where the Bears are trading the #1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. Getting a look at the trade details, Chicago receiving a massive haul there. Of course, with the number overall pick, they're going to get the 2023 9th and 61st overall pick, a 2024 first-round pick, and a 2025 second-round pick, and wide receiver DJ Moore. He's already tweeting out the shocked face emoji as his trade is going down. And then the Panthers, in return, are receiving that 2023 first overall pick. Getting a look at the top 10 picks in the 2023 NFL draft. The updated list, the #1 there, the Panthers, Texans, Cardinals, Colts, and the Seahawks because of that trade via Denver. Again, the Bears now moving to the #9 overall pick in the upcoming draft. And we have our draft guru, Ryan Wilson, along with Pete Prisco here joining us on HQ to kind of talk about this breaking news here. And fellas, I want to start off with just your general reaction. Ryan, what are you thinking when you're hearing about this trade?
Jacqueline, good to see you. Pete and I have been texting all afternoon, and I texted Pete a couple hours ago because I said I heard from a source that might be a situation here where a team's moving up to the top. And here we are a few hours later. At the close of business on Friday, and there's a team at the top now that's no longer the Bears. So it's not a surprise in that sense, and it's not a surprise in the general sense, Jacqueline, because unlike last year's draft class where we tried to pigeonhole all these guys as first-round quarterbacks and only one ended up going, no teams traded up for the quarterback, there's going to be a lot of movement at the top of the draft board here. We're seeing it happen now, some 49 days away from the actual draft, and I suspect there might be more movement as teams get nervous now looking up at the Panthers, who are going to get a quarterback, and then it'll be, okay, I'm the Colts, I'm the Raiders. What do I want to do? I'm the Texans, and which quarterback is going to be left for me to get? So not a surprise in the sense that trades are starting to happen. Sort of surprising that the team furthest away at #9 went all the way up to #1 more than 2 months out from this thing.
Desperation does wonderful things to NFL teams, and this is a desperate NFL team. The owner is desperate to find himself his quarterback. That's basically what this boils down to. He wants his own quarterback. He's tried all the guys, the stopgap guys. They don't work. They never work. They're just guys who fill in until you find the actual guy. So I give him an A for the aggression. I like that. I really do. Go find your guy. The problem is you gave up a giant haul to go move up in a draft where there isn't one of those guys, and yet there will be next year. In fact, there'll be 2 of them next year. And so I'm sitting here trying to play general manager as I always do here. Would I have traded all of those picks and DJ Moore to move up to draft any one of these 4 quarterbacks? And the answer to that question is absolutely not. So from that standpoint, I give him a D. I think it's an A for aggression. I understand it. I just don't love this quarterback class like a lot of other people do.
All right, yeah. So, Pete, you've already graded the trade there. So, Ryan, we'll ask you, what are your thoughts? Are you on the same page as Pete? Who do you think won this trade, Carolina or Chicago?
Well, if you hit the home run on the quarterback, then it's going to be Carolina. But as Pete's alluding to here, everyone thinks they get their franchise quarterback in the first round, and it pays off about 25% of the time. So there's a 1 in 4 chance that the Carolina Panthers are going to hit a home run. There are 4 quarterbacks likely to go in round 1. We'll find out in 3 years. But here's the thing, and Jacqueline, I'll point us back to 2021 when the 49ers traded up with the Dolphins from 12 to 3 to get Trey Lance. They had to give up 3 first-round picks over the course of that trade for over the 3 years. And those 3 first-round picks ended up being Micah Parsons, Cole Strange, and Channing Tindall, excuse me. So you could argue that Trey Lance hasn't worked out. That's no argument there. But that getting someone like a Micah Parsons or an offensive lineman like Cole Strange or a linebacker like Channing Tindall might have been better for the 49ers football team in general terms. So it's going to be a trade-off, and you're going to have to keep your fingers crossed that you hit on the right guy. And we'll wait and see. It makes it more exciting for us as people who are in the media like to talk about these things. But I would imagine that they're feeling a lot of pressure in Carolina because, as Pete alluded to, they've struck out via free agency and trade with these veteran quarterbacks. And it's go time right now. And David Tepper, the owner, appears to be out of patience, which is why he had to overpay to get to the top of this draft.
Yeah, 2016 was the last time the #1 overall pick has been traded, and that was with Jared Goff. All right, guys, so if you are the Panthers looking at the quarterbacks that you can take your pick from, who do you think is the best fit? And Pete, we'll start with you. I know there was a little bit of talk on and off camera. Ryan saying maybe this is a big moment for Anthony Richardson. Pete, you were disagreeing. So if you're the Panthers, what do you do for quarterback? Who's the best fit in your opinion?
Can I hold on to the pick until next year and I get, Caleb Williams or C.J. Stroud, or Drake May? Can I do that? I'd like to hold on to it next year because they're both better than what's in this class, both of them. And so you can't. So you went up to go make a move. So who am I stuck taking? Do I take the 5'10", 195-pound Bryce Young? Do I take Anthony Richardson, who can't hit the easy passes and can hit the home runs? Do I take C.J. Stroud, who had inconsistencies in his game? Or do I take Will Levis, who was terrible at times at Kentucky? I have to pick one of those because they moved up to go get one. My gut tells me it's between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. And when I look at it on paper, how can you move up to take a 5'10" quarterback? He's the best pure passer in this draft. But again, there are so many teams that have concerns about him. Maybe C.J. Stroud would make sense there. He's a pure passer. They like that. They need that. That might be the direction to go. And remember, it's a new staff, new coach in Frank Reich. They want to have a good presence, a pocket passer. That's why I think C.J. Stroud might make some sense here.
I had a source text me right before we went on the air here, and it's not Pete Prisco, but they said, oh, they're going for Bryce or they're going for CJ. So it doesn't sound like Anthony Richardson, even though that'd be a fun story because Jacqueline went to Florida, or Will Levis, who, as Pete noted, through gritted teeth, that he did have a tough year last year, even though physically he does a lot of things really well. So it feels like Bryce or CJ. And here's the thing, and I know Pete does not like the fact that Bryce Young is historically tiny. That is true. He doesn't play that way. He didn't have durability concerns in terms of taking hits in the pocket at Alabama and not being able to play. He got injured on a freak play on the sidelines when he was trying to stretch the ball out. And I think if you can keep him upright, and that's a big if, he has a chance to be really, really good. And Pete, we'll do the Rick Spielman dollar bet. I think Bryce Young will be better over his first 3 years than Caleb Williams. We can talk about that offline, but I don't mind the Carolina Panthers if they love Bryce or CJ taking him here with the understanding that Frank Reich's on staff. He does a good job with young quarterbacks. Jim Caldwell's on staff. He's done a great job with young quarterbacks, and it might be best case scenario for Bryce Young given the slim pickings of the teams that need quarterbacks right now.
Look, they're going up to get a guy that's not Trevor Lawrence. It's not Justin Herbert. It isn't one of those guys. That's the problem. None of these guys are that guy. Here's the thing. Had they moved up a couple years ago to pick up Justin Herbert, which they could have done, there was talk of them doing it, they wouldn't be in this predicament. So I don't think any one of these guys on paper you can sit here and say they solve that position. It's speculation. They all have major questions.
All right, and guys, let's talk about Chicago, the other side of the trade here. What do you think they're going to do with that number 9 pick, Ryan?
So I think Pete would probably give them an A in terms of the draft haul they got in terms of compensation. They do get a wide receiver to help offset the 32nd pick they had to give up for Chase Claypool. Hasn't worked out yet, fingers crossed. Maybe it does. They're not going to draft a wide receiver this high, Jacqueline. They could get an offensive lineman. I don't think Jalen Carter falls to 9, even if there's a run on quarterbacks or Will Anderson. I don't think he falls there, but there could be a Miles Murphy here. There could be a Tyree Wilson here if he's healthy, a Lucas Van Ness, or an offensive lineman. You could probably have the first pick of offensive lineman right around 9. And I think this is best case scenario for the Bears. They went down not too far. I suppose they can continue to trade down, but then you're starting to risk these players that I mentioned. You stay put here, and then you think about what you want to do as the draft unfolds after that. But you're going to get a blue chip player on the edge. Jalen Carter, fingers crossed, if everything goes right, but I don't think it does. Or you're going to get an offensive tackle that can start right away for you and go a long way in helping to protect Justin Fields.
Yeah, don't forget, this is a team that has a ton of cap room next week when free agency opens. I think they solve their right tackle position in free agency, either signing Jawan Taylor, Mike McGlinchey, one of those guys, Caleb McGarry maybe. And I think they'll go to a different direction. I do think they're going to go and try and upgrade the defensive line. You have to get somebody who can rush the passer. If Wilson's there, I think that would make a ton of sense. I know he has a bum foot, but he says he's going to be able and willing to go. And boy, the upside with a guy like that is incredible. He could also look at a wide wide receiver. Remember, sometimes when you have your quarterback, and they've decided, rightfully so, by the way, that they like Justin Fields and he's their guy, build it around them. If you get some offensive linemen in free agency, find a receiver in this draft. And there's a couple guys. I mean, there's not a great receiving group, but there are a couple guys that could fall and play here. And maybe you could even move down again and still get one of those wide receivers and add more picks. Look, the Bears are in great shape. Ton of cap room, young quarterback, cheap quarterback, and now they have the draft picks to really supplement the roster. I love what Ryan Poles is doing.
All right, and Ryan, obviously in your latest mock draft, which is before this trade went down, and a lot of your mock drafts, you've had Bryce Young going to Houston. Obviously, they're looking for a quarterback as well. What do you think they do? Say Carolina takes a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud. Where does that leave Houston, who's also looking for their QB1?
Yeah, Houston's still sitting at 2, right, Jacqueline? And I had a source text me the other day saying that Houston was all in on Bryce Young. So unless they're going to trade with the Colts, they might have to trade with the Colts to get Bryce Young. So they'll sweat it out, and then they'll do the math on C.J. Stroud and see where he fits in to their plans going forward. I don't know whether they like C.J. or not. I do know that they have interest in Bryce Young. So it'll be interesting to see. And if they're not in on C.J. or Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, maybe they're willing to move down a spot or two, allow a team like the Colts or the Raiders to come up, and then they can get a couple more draft picks and they reevaluate what they want to do in terms of building that roster. I don't think they're going to build it in quotation marks around Davis Mills, but now they have to figure out what plan B is going to be, or they could just say a lot of prayers and hope that the Panthers at the top take C.J. Stroud and then Bryce Young falls to them.
Yeah, I've heard the Texans are high on Bryce Young as well, but I don't see a team with Frank Reich as the coach trading up to draft a small quarterback. If you go back and look at his quarterbacks, they're usually bigger guys. I don't think it's going to be Bryce Young. So the Texans might be able to sit there and pick their own guy. If I looked at it on paper, I'd say, give him C.J. Stroud number 1, give him Bryce Young number 2. Then you'll see how the Richardson and Levis fall, because I do think they're all going in the top 10. But I think on paper right now, I think the Texans will take Bryce Young. I think he'll be there for them to be able to make that pick.
All right, Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson joining us here on CBS Sports HQ to talk about that breaking news out of the NFL, where the Bears are trading the number 1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. Getting a look at the trade details, Chicago receiving a massive haul, which includes the number 9 overall pick in this year's draft and a first rounder in next year's draft. Plus, they're also going to receive wide receiver DJ Moore, along with other future draft selections. And the Panthers, again, getting that 2023 first overall pick. You can hear Ryan Wilson alongside Rick Spielman on their podcast With the First Pick. All things draft all the time. You can download and listen wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also scan that QR code.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.